now going to move on to the second part of our conversation around greenwishing, looking at ways companies are working to create products that are delicious, healthy, and good for the planet. Joining us, we have Chef Pierre Thiam, the founder and president of Yolele, and founder of executive chef of Teranga. We also have Kathleen Strand, the head of communications at Builders Vision. I also want to thank Builders Vision for supporting our program and making today possible. They are rock stars. Thank you. We also have Jess Baum, the senior director of Regenerative Impact at Bonterra Organic Estates, and our moderator, Teresa Welsh, who is a senior reporter for Devex. Please join me in welcoming them all. More applause, more applause. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope we're not getting you in your post-lunch food coma, but hopefully you've all been enjoying the snacks outside. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you and with our panel for the second half of the Greenwishing. So we heard on that first panel from some pretty big companies, some corporate names that you likely have heard of, and I'm really pleased to be here with some folks that perhaps you haven't heard of and to hear about how greenwishing is operating in different aspects of the food system. So I'm so pleased to be here with you all. And Pierre, I'd love to start right with you. Tell us about Yolele. Tell us about your model for the company.
Well, Yolele is an African food brand. It's an African food company. And what we do is work with small farming communities and identify underutilized crops that grow in Africa and open markets for them. That's basically what Yolele is. The mission is to open a global market for underutilized crops that are grown in a resilient manner and with a goal of having triple impact on the environment, impact on the communities, and impact on the consumers.
That's a lot of impact there. Thanks so much for sharing that. Tell us a little bit about the specific grains that you farm and why those are so important to the food systems locally where they're grown for those farmers.
So the way we wanted to approach it was to identify crops that are underutilized, and one in particular called fonio caught our attention because it's an oldest cultivated grain in Africa. And why is it important? Because it grows in an area called the Sahel, which is south of the Sahara Desert, dry and arid. And fonio is drought resistant. It's very, not only drought resistant, but it regenerates the soil. It has deep roots that add nutrients to the soil. And in addition to being great to the environment, it's also a nutrition powerhouse. It's gluten-free, it's protein-dense, it's a low glycemic index, scores low glycemic index. There's lots going on for it. So what we decided was to really figure out a way to turn this crop, a crop that's so great for the environment and for your health, should be a world-class crop. And this is what Yolele, my company, decided to do. We decided to bring it to the market. We started with Whole Foods, one supermarket in New York. Today we distributed across the U.S. Now we have not only that one grain fonio, but we also have fonio pilafs. Some of you have had the chance to try our fonio chips. Now we're entering the snack category. And that's this model of development that we thought was a path forward for all the underutilized crops. Create a market by branding them, by adding value, and then go back to the supply side. Once the demand is created, go back to the supply side and work with a growing network of small farmers and innovate in the transformation. The processing was the part where we really knew that how we could scale it and turn it into global market by processing it the proper way with the standards that are considered as GFSI type of standards. So that's what we did. We created a mill. We installing a mill in Mali, packaging in Senegal, and distributing in West Africa and around the world.
Thanks so much. And I want to talk a little bit more about your supply chain a bit later. But Kathleen, I want to bring you in. Tell us a little bit about Builders Vision. And I would love to hear, if you hear about a company that's doing something like Pierre's doing, what are your next steps and how do you work with such a company?
Thank you so much. Glad to be here today. I'm Kathleen Strand, Head of Communications for Builders Vision. And Builders Vision is an impact platform that uses advocacy, investment, and philanthropy to drive systemic change. We focus on major sectors: oceans, food, and most recently, energy. And we use that, so we have a foundation, we have a direct investment team, and we have an asset management team, and they're all coordinating and working together to drive toward our vision and mission. And our mission is really shifting markets and minds for good. We believe market change is essential in order to really see the change we need to see in the world. And what's so unique about Builders Vision, what I love about Builders Vision is if you're any size company at any point during your journey, we are tool agnostic. So what that means is you bring us the solution and we'll find a way to help you wherever you're at. So if you're really early stage, there's lots of potential, but the market's not there yet. We see that potential, and our Impact First team will invest in you and help you grow. And in theory, the philanthropy is backing that up with data and research around the field and the industry and where the challenges and frictions are, quite frankly, that we need to address. And in an ideal world, you grow and scale, and you're showing that profit and purpose are not mutually exclusive. And then our VC, S2G Ventures, will step in and say, you're ready. You're ready for us. You're not only going to change the world, but you've got a really strong economic platform and engine that we're interested in. And so what I would say is it's for the company comes to us and we'll figure out the tool. It's a whole process that's part art, part science, right? You got to have data. You got to have the analysis. We have extreme due diligence and a deep commitment to impact measurement and management. So we really want to get to know a company inside and out, and including their values and their commitment to ESG. But also, there's a secret sauce there. And you've got something special and someone special that you want to invest in.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much. Jess, I want to bring you in. Tell us a little bit about your company, Bonterra Organic Estates. I'm going to say right now, I believe we get to try your wine later. Is that correct? All right, so y'all better stick around for the party to be able to try some of Jess's wine. But your company is climate neutral certified, and you've really been intentional about doing a lot of the things that Kathleen was just talking about. So tell us a little bit about what climate neutral certified even is and how your company got there.
Yeah, so technically our brand, Bonterra, is climate neutral certified. Our company is B Corp certified, and all 850 acres of our vineyard is Regenerative organic certified. So we're big believers in certification, and that's really how we move from greenwishing to green doing, I would say. Not in 2050, but today. Mm-hmm. And so you'll hear, I want to talk specifically about our Regenerative organic certification because I think it's something that's really unique and growing. A lot of companies are starting to use the word regenerative, and there's no definition to what that means from a legal perspective or from a government perspective. So we have aligned with the highest standard available, the Regenerative Organic certification through the Regenerative Organic Alliance. And that uses organic as a baseline and builds upon it with specific requirements for soil health, for animal welfare, and for social fairness. So the Little Peasants performance that we saw earlier, I know tugged at a lot of our heartstrings. One of the things that it touched upon was the need for workers to be able to organize and unionize collectively. The Regenerative Organic certification, which often is spoken about as more of a soil health certification, also ensures that we pay not just a minimum wage, but a fair living wage to all of our workers, including our seasonal farm workers, and that we allow them to unionize if they choose to, and also has very stringent requirements around hours worked and fair and ethical treatment.
Wow, that's super interesting. I didn't know that about the labor stuff. Yeah, give it up.
Yeah, I think ultimately what it comes down to is a certification verifying respect for life. And I recently pulled all of the words behind those 3 certifications that I mentioned through a word calculator, and it was 42,685 words that we hold ourselves accountable to.
And I think we've got that on a slide, if we can throw it up for the audience to see, if our tech folks can put that up. But what did you notice when you did that?
That it's a lot of words. What I noticed was I started, as I showed that to others, I started asking for a show of hands of the number of people who have ever voluntarily volunteered, whatever, who have ever volunteered to be audited by the IRS. Raise your hand. Have you ever volunteered? No? You know, to this day, I've never gotten a single person that said yes. But that's exactly what we're doing. Maybe not with the IRS, but we're asking and ensuring that we're audited around our practices as far as climate neutrality, as far as ethical business and ethical farming. Mm-hmm. So we're holding ourselves to the highest standards in the land and ensuring that we measure up today.
And Pierre, I'd love to hear from you what some of those standards look like in the countries where you're operating. Obviously, the laws in different countries, exports, supply chain stuff is different in every place, but how do you hold your company to some of those standards, you know, whether it's an official certification or, you know, just the values that your business lives by?
So what we're doing, we realized early, we had to be not only figuring out ways to support the communities, and to support the communities would mean at different levels, at government levels, to bring not only increasing research, investing in research on the crops, but investing in also training the farmers in better agricultural practices, because this is what we're having a problem, and that's where we need to scale. And to allow it to happen was for us to figure out the solution on the processing level so that the farmers do what they do best, which is growing, and training them with doing that, and training them in not only by bringing the right support, the right research on that, but also in how to manage the land. And this is where we bring the expert and the collaborations to help us get to that point.
Mm-hmm. And Kathleen, from the investor side, how do investors go about incentivizing businesses to do the things that our two friends here are already doing? You know, obviously a lot of people feel, you know, an obligation to do that with their life's work, with their business, but how can the money help us push a little bit further in that direction?
Yeah, great question. You know, money is a powerful thing. And I think investors making choices to invest in sustainable companies and solutions is critical. For us, you know, and what is, you know, SXSW Ventures started back in 2014. It was an early stage food venture fund, the first of its kind, and it's grown to do some really amazing things. And for them, it was about purpose and profit, like making the case. And when I talk about shifting markets and minds, that you know, there's an economic model for success here, and that consumers, quite frankly, are demanding it, and they want it, and we believe that. And so we're just kind of, you know, we think all investors should be going where the consumers are, not only because we need to save the planet and improve human health, but because it's economically the right thing to do, and it's you know, from an investment, the smart thing to do. I mean, climate change and everything, you know, is a risk, and so we need to be smart and make these choices. And I think about that from the investor standpoint, and you know, we can talk a little bit about just how bigger businesses and corporations can invest and lift up these solutions too.
Yeah, thanks so much. Jess, tell us a little bit more. I feel like we don't necessarily often talk about the wine industry when we're talking about regenerative agriculture. Is that because it's really rare and it's not happening, or those stories just aren't getting through? What are some of the challenges that you face in the wine industry to really ensure that your practices are regenerative, and how you've centered that?
Yeah, I think that the wine industry lends itself to regenerative organic agriculture, and I do specifically say regenerative organic because it's its own thing with its own definition, which is very different than just the open-ended term regenerative, and we're finding it's important to bring structure to that. So I'll say that we are not the only one, luckily. We are at this time the biggest, but we hope to not be able to say that for long. And I would say that wine, especially in this country, finds itself on the front lines of the climate crisis. We are the canary in the coal mine in California. Yeah. We're finding issues with smoke taint, with water. When there's fires, we have smoke-tainted grapes. There are issues with water. either usually too little, this year too much. And actually, we are really proud to say that with the historic flooding in California this year, we didn't lose a single vine. And that's because of the health of our soils and the biodiversity within them and the really resilience that that creates. So I would say that more than other industries, wine needs to turn to regenerative organic agriculture in order to survive. And just as humans, we find ourselves in an existential fight for our lives.
Yeah, that's really powerful, I think, because you have obviously made this intentional choice with your business, but you're still sort of at the mercy of the rest of the climate change impacts, right, there in California. When there's fires every fall, you can't build a big bubble around all of your vines to protect them from the smoke. I'd also love to know, sort of within the industry, how much people are talking about this. Is it really a consumer-driven thing and consumers are asking for it, or do you feel like within other businesses they're saying, wow, we really recognize climate change, with the water, with the smoke and all of that, and we need to be doing something to make these changes?
So my belief is that for companies that aren't doing greenwishing, that are doing green acting, marketing is just education. And so I think it's not consumers asking for this. It's us educating consumers to understand what the impact they can have is. And one of the challenges, I think, with wine is we have less real estate on our label than perhaps others, like Dr. Bronner's, who very famously just covers and everything. And they were part of founding, along with Patagonia, the Regenerative Organic certification, and with the Rodale Institute, those 3 institutions. So I think in the absence of federal legislation to support what we need to do, which, by the way, we lobby for, because any corporate climate commitments that don't include advocacy and lobbying are incomplete, because we need to change the system. Short of that, we have to educate consumers so that they know what to ask for, so that they know how to vote with their dollar, and so that they can lead the revolution. And what the studies show us is that consumers are hungry for this, especially younger consumers, but really all consumers. And it's what workers are hungry for in the places that they want to be employed. And really, I like to say that our job is to make the consumer the hero of our impact story, because that helps to shift their perspective, the perspective of the consumer of how they see themselves, and then that changes their buying habits.
Pierre, what about for you? What role do you see the consumer playing? Do you feel like companies are bringing a product to them that is totally new and they haven't necessarily been seeking out, or are you seeing the same demand from consumers?
Absolutely, the demand is real. When we started, like 7 years ago, introducing a crop that no one knew about here in the U.S., with the goal to tell the story, to educate people, tell them what the crop was about and how important it was in this food system, how it could help bring a solution. We found the consumers. Within 5 years, we were distributed nationally because the consumers were there, especially, like you mentioned, the Gen Zs and the millennials, who are our ambassadors and who took it and really promoted it on their own. And those people were not particularly culturally related to the crop, and that was the great thing with fonio, that because it's so versatile, you could have so many different ways to apply for it. So the demand is here, and now we just have to make it accessible. Making those products accessible, bring them to market is the way to do it. Branding, marketing, but at the same time supporting the supply side and training the farmers and processing as well.
Yeah, and what are some of the challenges you face in doing that, in training farmers and ensuring that their products are ready for the international supply chain and for export?
Well, creating that network of farmers itself was not the most challenging part. The farmers would grow the grains when they have a market. They know how to grow it. They've been growing it for their subsistence. They have the land. Fonio happened to be a grain that's easy to grow. It no need to till. It grows in poor soil, so they call it the lazy farmer's crop for that reason. So that, telling them that you will buy their production, that's all they're asking for. So that was the part that we needed to work on and work on the networking side. The challenge was really on the processing for us, because we had to have the processing standards elevated so that we could deliver to the market at the standard that is required. And that needed innovation. We needed to hire Bueller to design a mill specifically for fonio, but we also knew that we didn't want to focus strictly on fonio and turn it into monoculture, because those farmers will only grow fonio if there's a market for only fonio. So we just wanted to make sure we look into what grows in that ecosystem, what the farmers used to grow in rotation with fonio. We would open a market for those crops as well. And that's how we gradually started to bring even other underutilized crops into our products as we introduced our pilafs, we introduced dawa, we introduced moringa, etc., etc. That was the reason the reason for that was to make sure that there is other sources of income that is coming to the farmers. When there's income coming, they will organize and they will bring the products.
Yeah, big incentive, right? When you're getting
exactly.
the money from it. Is fonio the next quinoa?
Well, it has lots of the quinoa properties.
Okay.
The quinoa story was inspiring in some ways, in the sense that it's a grain that was in the Andes and then became a global crop. And we also learned a lot from quinoa that we don't want to repeat with fonio. We want to make sure the ultimate beneficiaries are the small farming communities. There are ways to do it, mentioned, like even saving the appellation of fonio for the region and the farmers that grow it, the method of growing. So fonio wouldn't be grown in Montana like quinoa is, or in Ukraine. So that was one thing. Another way to work on it was to even protect the seeds. The seeds can only travel for research purposes. Another way that we are doing concretely was by innovating and having a mill that will really process it and in a way that's more efficient and have fonio accessible to the market by working with the small farmers and making the small farmers part of the whole supply chain, making them count. So those are methods that we are doing, but definitely inspired by the fact that a grain can be taken from an unknown place, like lost crops, how they call it in West Africa, these crops like fonio, and create a market for them that is saving biodiversity. Like I was saying, you're also saving the environment, right? And you bringing income to the farmers, and we diversifying our diet across the world. We have access to crops that are delicious and nutritious.
Mm-hmm. Kathleen, when Builders Vision is thinking about the companies that it's going to work with, is it you going out identifying them? Is it people coming to you with value propositions? What does that mix look like for Builders Vision?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. And we're really all about partnerships and building cohorts with fellow funders who are looking at the same type of systemic change. And the more you're out there and working, and it's just an honor to be on the stage with you guys, because that's why we exist. We exist to help and support the innovators and those on the front lines who are trying to figure this out. And so it's a combination of information flow and opportunities coming to us, and we host conversations and dialogues, and I think we've probably got close to 150 companies.
Wow.
That we're invested in, not including our grants. We have over 500 grantees that are kind of side by side with our innovators and entrepreneurs.
Wow. And when you're working with all of these companies, are there some common challenges that come up with businesses that are really trying to be climate friendly? They're trying to be sustainable. They want to do the right thing, but they sort of keep hitting barriers. What are some of those, and how do you sort of work with them to try and overcome them?
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be a surprise. A CEO has got to run a business, and he or she has to pay their employees. They've got to figure out their strategies. And for us, we see ourselves as so much more than an investor, but as a family member, where we're there to kind of help them figure out how they need to scale, where they need to go. But they've got the day-to-day operation. So we're really mindful of that. We're working on surveying our entire portfolio to help understand where they're at in their ESG journey. Mm-hmm. But we're like, we have to be sensitive to the fact that they have to, they've got to run their business.
They have a bottom line.
Their bottom line. And so I think it's a give and take, and it's like, how can we help? We provide resources, like I said, expertise, dialogues, and any one of our team members is available for a phone call to help them figure this out. So we wouldn't be investing in them if they weren't about a sustainable or health solution in the first place.
Right.
But how do we help them live up to their vision and ambition by being respectful of, like, you got a business to run.
Exactly. Jess, from your perspective, you're obviously so passionate about what you do. You can tell how values-driven your business is. Are there some challenges that you find yourself sort of continually confronting when you try to center these values in the way that you run your business and say, oh, I really wish we could do X, but like we just have to do Y in this case because financially or whatever else, we just cannot make it work?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that in a system where the externalities are external, right? The cost that we don't necessarily see on the price tag, where that cost is paid by the marginalized people upstream and downstream, and the price is not included, it's really hard. It's hard to make a business case. I heard earlier it's hard to stay in the green when you're in the red, and the bottom line is always the bottom line. Right. I would say that having somebody like me on staff is important, somebody who is not afraid to be the conscience, who's not afraid to sound the alarm, who's not afraid to stand up for what's right, even if it's not what's profitable, because we are in an existential fight for our lives, and there will be no wine industry and no industry if there's no humans. And so I think that's a really depressing answer, but the short answer is that events like this, people like you, and press really make a difference, because when I'm able to come back to the company and say, I talked to all these people and told them about how important this is and potentially converted customers, then that matters. And so I see myself as, the company's success is my success. So hopefully people care about these things and they want to support us because of what we support. And as a result, we'll grow. And as we grow in size, we grow in impact, because sales is just a fuel for doing more good.
And I would also just say, Kathleen, too, in terms of challenges, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but, the regulation isn't there yet. And so, or they have a lot of the difficulty with the supply chain not being able to meet them where their solution is at. So we're also always thinking about how we can advocate on behalf of our entrepreneurs with elected officials and regulators, as well as executives and corporations. Like, you have to take a look at these guys. And then the magic is when a major corporation says, yeah, we're actually going to invest, and we're going to get you even further and farther and faster. And so helping to break down those doors into major corporations, but also to influence and shape regulations so that, they're able to bring the solution that they need.
Absolutely, I second that. This is like access to those corporations would have such a much bigger impact for companies like ours. And we figured out once we get the innovation so that we can bring the quality and the quantity that's supplied for those corporations, if someone at Kellogg's or Mars or Nestle even used 1% of these products into their actual products without even having to recreate a new product, if they have products, and we know that we're bringing a product that only is of quality, but it's also a demand, because we know that we showed that there's a proof of concept, there's a demand for these products, but these products will not only help you meet your sustainable development goals, but it will also improve your actual products, so you can have access to a market and you can have an impact that alone Yolele wouldn't be able to have, but along with you guys, companies of that size, big food, that's where the difference is being made.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Thanks so much to Pierre, Kathleen, and Jess for joining us. Don't forget to stick around later for the reception where you'll be able to try some of Bonterra's wine. Again, I'm Teresa Welsh with Devex, and I write a newsletter called Devex Dish, and really would welcome all of you joining us. We have these conversations every week, and it was really great joining you all for this panel. So please give a round of applause.